Creepiest abandoned places in Europe. Hey everyone, it's Alexa and welcome back to another video. Considering the enormous size of Europe, it takes up 6.8% of Earth's land surface, we can only imagine how many creepy and mysterious abandoned places there are to explore. The name Europe comes from classical Greek mythology after the Phoenician princess Europa. Let's put on our backpacks and go exploring. But before we get into today's video, make sure that you're subscribed and ring the bell so that you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Krakow, Italy. First stop, Italy, and we head to a ghost town known as Krakow. Several landslides and earthquakes forced the villagers out of their little town, and these days it's a popular tourist attraction, and filmmakers love this location for its breathtaking scenery. It was also the setting for a Japanese Pepsi commercial. St. Brevil's Castle, England. Said to be one of the most haunted castles in all of England, this Gloucestershire-based castle is a huge drawcard for ghost hunters. It was built in the 12th century and served as a royal hunting ground, a court, and a prison. If you're not too scared, you can stay in a little youth hostel inside the castle. It's a secret dungeon that still bears the marks of prisoners from the 16th century. Royds Asylum, England. It may not look creepy, but this was once a mental hospital. It opened in 1888 and closed in 2003. Jimmy Savile has been connected to this hospital, and it was alleged he committed abuse here during the 1980s. The building was beautiful, but over time became derelict and super creepy. Inside were discarded syringes, padded cells, and rusty wheelchairs. It's now, thankfully, been converted, but for residential use. Hellfire Club, Ireland. This former hunting lodge was a gathering place for the elite in the 1700s. The ruins still stand on the top of Montpelier Hill with views of Massey Woods. With such eerie ruins, you can imagine the stories that have surfaced from here, including human and animal sacrifices. Many claim to have seen a demonic-looking creature with a human face and hooved feet. There's also a resident ghost of a young lady who frequents the area. She was said to have burned inside a barrel. Canfranc Station, Spain. There's been talk that this once thriving international train station will once again rise, but when that will be for sure, we are none the wiser. Welcome to Canfranc Station that opened in 1928 and operated until 1970. A train derailment demolished a bridge, and it was decided to not rebuild due to financial constraints. Ironically, more people visit the abandoned station now than they did when it was fully operational. Famagusta Cyprus. Hard to believe that this dismal-looking place used to be one of the top tourist destinations in the world. It saw the likes of Brigitte Bardot, Elizabeth Taylor, and Richard Nixon spending time there. Things changed in 1974 when the Turkish invaded Cyprus. Citizens were forced to flee, leaving Varosha empty. The buildings continue to decay daily, and it's uncertain of the future of this once thriving spot. Chatterley Whitfield Colliery, Stoke-on-Trent, UK. There are several abandoned coal mines across the UK, and they're all a little bit creepy. But it's Chatterley Whitfield Colliery that stands out. It's located on the outskirts of Stoke-on-Trent and was operational between 1863 and 1974. They hold the record for being the first coal mine to produce 1 million tons of coal every year. It was regarded as a museum when the mining ceased, but was officially closed to visitors in 1993. Soulja Bulgaria. You know the saying, if walls could speak? Wouldn't you love to know what was discussed inside the walls of Soulja? This abandoned site used to be home to the Bulgarian Communist Party, and the building went up in 1974 and functioned until 1989, until the government's fall from power. People loved breaking into this place to get surreal photographs, but the derelict building is now protected by a guard 24/7. Hohenwerfen Castle, Burg Hohenwerfen, Austria. It's earned the nickname Adventure Castle, but going there in its original days was certainly no adventure. The castle was completed in 1078 and served as a place of exile for many, a military base at one point, a prison, and on a maybe lighter note, a hunting resort. The dungeon saw many leaders and activists perish there. These days, it's a museum, a place for concerts and tours. Church of Sant Roma de Sau, Spain. It was sunk on purpose, but you can't help but feel a little weirded out by the steeple sticking its head out of the water in Catalonia. For more than 1,000 years, this church and town thrived. That was until the 1960s. The little city was submerged to create a reservoir, so homes were deserted and new lives were started by the residents. But you can go and visit this surreal spot today. Klagenfurt Power Plant, Budapest. This was once the largest electrical generation plant in the world. It was built in 1912 and partially abandoned in 2005. The plant was designed and built built by architects that wanted to break away from the typical structures associated with power plants, and came up with this exquisitely beautiful Art Deco plant. Music videos and movies have all been filmed in this power plant, and occasionally there is a tour that goes through, but you must book well in advance to be lucky enough to get a spot. Residential Francisco Hernando Cesena, Spain. Not all creepy places involve ghosts or mental asylums, and often structures go up and things don't go as planned, and they remain that way for decades, just getting worse for wear year after year. Residential Francisco Hernando in Cesena, Spain was a major project that wasn't completed due to a recession that hit the world's economy in 2008. This was a $9 billion project that now remains empty and a haven for urban explorers. Krampnitz, Russian Barracks, Germany. This was once a military complex in Potsdam and was created by the Germans during the rearmament period and was built in 1937. The Russians eventually took control of the area, and it was then used by the 35th Guards Motor Rifle Division. They abandoned it in 1992. There was talk about converting it into urban development, but to date, it remains empty. Kirby Hall, Gretton, England. It must have been a beauty in its day. Kirby Hall was owned by Sir Christopher Hatton, who was Lord Chancellor to Queen Elizabeth I. Construction on the dwelling began in 1570, and it was heavily influenced by French architecture. It's currently managed by English Heritage. Most of the rooms are missing a roof. However, the Great Room and staterooms are in great condition. Kirby Hall has seen many films and TV series being shot here. Lenox Castle Hospital, Glasgow, Scotland. Nestled in a wooden estate just outside of Glasgow is this eerie-looking abandoned castle. It opened in 1936 and was home to people with learning and mental challenges. Sadly, the stories that come from this castle are tragic. At its fullest, it was meant to house 1,200 people, but at one stage there were 1,700 patients there. The medical director of the hospital once commented that he had never worked in quote-unquote a worse pit. It's been left empty since 2002, with many buildings already demolished. There was a fire in 2008 that caused a lot of interior damage, and it's fenced off now for safety reasons. Bran Castle, Transylvania, Romania. Vampires, bats, sharp teeth, and garlic are what you could expect if you head to Bran Castle in Transylvania, Romania. Many believe that the book Dracula by Bram Stoker saw Dracula residing in this castle. However, Stoker probably didn't even know about this castle when he wrote the book. Bran Castle is now a museum, and if you're brave enough, you can even tour through the empty halls by yourself. Carabanchel Prison, Spain. This was one of the biggest prisons in Europe until its closure in 1998. It once held 2,000 male prisoners and 500 female prisoners, and since its abandonment, became a haven for graffiti artists, thieves, and was inhabited by marginal communities. There was speculation that the entire prison would become 650 apartments, but that never materialized, and it was eventually torn down in 2008. Hartwood Mental Hospital, Hartwood, Scotland. It's no wonder that any building that houses mentally ill patients will have a lot of stigmas attached to it. This one was built in 1890 and looks more like a medieval castle than a mental hospital. It operated until 1998. Part of the building was used as a TV studio until 2002, but that didn't last long. A fire ravaged parts of the building in 2004, and it lost some roofing and parts of the western clock tower. Chiajna Monastery, Romania. This monastery has been around since the late 1700s and is in Bucharest. It's been through a lot, including bombing, abandonment, ghosts, missing guests, and the plague. This church was meant to be one of the most important places of worship, but the plague prevented that from happening. The building is in a poor state and is boarded up, but that doesn't stop people from scaling the fence to take some super creepy photographs. Ballestrino, Italy. Our next stop is Genoa, where you'll come across Ballestrino. It's not 100% deserted and has roughly 600 people staying in the more modern area. The area dates back to the 11th century, and it was once thriving with olive trees. It was abandoned in 1953 for hydrogeological instability. It's the perfect backdrop for movies, as seen in the movie Inkheart. Castle of Meissen, Belgium. This enormous castle was owned by the Betta family and designed by Giovanni Niccolò Servandoni, a famous Italian architect. This 18th century castle was later bought by a Catholic institution in 1897 and functioned as a school and chapel. It later became a school for the orphans of soldiers that fought in World War I, but has been left empty ever since. The castle was demolished to make way for a new sanatorium in 2010. Croix Rouge, Paris, France. This once bustling terminal station only survived for 16 years, from 1923 to 1939. The station closed when France entered into World War II. It never reopened when the war was over because it was so close to another station and there was just no need to have two busy stations. Dole Belgium. Just across the border of Holland is an abandoned little village called Dole. There are a few people who live here, but you could count them on both hands. Around 40 years ago, the government announced plans to build a nuclear plant near the village and people quickly left. Over time, the village has turned into a pretty spooky place with loads of abandoned homes, with broken windows and doors, with the odd rustling curtain. Tourists do like to come to peek, but we guarantee they don't stay very long. If you could visit one of these creepy abandoned places in Europe, which would you pick and why? Restaurante Panoramico, Lisbon, Portugal. This is an old restaurant, built in 1968 by the Lisbon Council. It stands in the middle of Monsanto Forest Park and boasts outstanding views. It's a shame nobody can appreciate those views because the restaurant is totally derelict. Some of the original artwork still decorates the place, including original tiles by Manuela Madureira, a well-known Portuguese artist.